There's the critique of the redos for big and small. We're going to start at the bottom, work our way up. I'm not sure how that just happened. How did I just end up at the next one previous, maybe? That's 8 a.m. composites. It should take me to the end of this, to 9 a.m. composites. I'm sorry about that. I hit a button while I started. Here we go. This is where I thought I was, and somehow I hit page O. Oh, because this doesn't belong here. This is why I'm confused. Chamberlain. Doesn't belong here. Okay, that confused me. Let's start at the bottom here. I am not going to talk about a magazine spread. Ha! You can all see why I was confused. I think that was an honest mistake. Did not expect to see that. All right, let's talk about Jenna's. Is this your redo? This is your redo. It doesn't say redo. Should always mark them redo if it's a redo. I'm going to believe it's a redo. All right, so let's talk about the shadow density first. First of all, I think you got a nice cutout of the dog. I'm not sure that the dog seems all that small because there's nothing to compare it with. Maybe if the golf ball was back further and it was really large. So the closer you are to the bottom line, the closer you are to the camera, which means the closer you are to me. So this dog should be right down here. And then the ball, to show that it's big, should be in the distance, which would then make it seem bigger because it's further away. That tree is really big because it's in the distance and it's not even as tall as the ball, right? All right, so there's that relationship. But your cutouts look pretty good from what I can see. Here we go. The dog looks a little funky right here. I'm not sure what's going on with the dog here, but it almost looks like there's an L shape to the dog. And I'm wondering, I'll look into this bigger when I go to grade it. It's hard to do here while I'm doing these videos. But it seems like the dog is missing a piece. Okay, talk about the shadows and the lighting. The shadows in the scene are much darker than the shadows you created. So we instantly know that they're different and probably not real because these have a greater density. Excuse me. The densest part of it actually occludes any detail in the grass. It totally blacks out. So these shadows need to be doing a similar thing. Also notice that the shadows here are dark in the center and they get a little lighter as they go to the edge because leaves are a little translucent as you go to the edge. You're not going to have that with your dog so much. Well, certainly not with a golf ball. I think you have the right amount of blurriness, just not the right amount of darkness. The directions are good. To really convince me that this dog is in the grass and that this ball is in the grass, you should have taken the clone stamp tool and just stamped a little leaves and grass along the bottom, right? So it's like it's setting in there. And the dog could have done just the same thing, just a smaller bit just in front, and you'll see where other people have done this. Overall, a pretty good job. I think the lighting on the dog. So here, everything on the right side should be bright. Things on the left should be dark. So the ball isn't really realistic here because there's a specular highlight on this ball that I'm not sure you could ever really fully get rid of easily with the things you've learned in this course. So maybe a different ball would have been more apropos because this does have the good shading in the proper direction, but this specular highlight tells me there's another light source, really bright, small light source coming from this direction, like a car's headlights or something. And that's just odd. Okay, and the dog also should be brighter on the right than it is on the left, and it is not. It is darker on the right than it is on the left, brighter on the right than it is on the left. So we're missing that cue, right? The part closest to the shadow should be the darkest. So you have a few things structurally kind of flip-flopped around, but I want to say that's probably, I could go look for your other one. If I do that for everybody, if I go back and forth, it's just going to take forever. I don't want these redos to take forever, so we're not going to do that. All right, Anastasia. Anastasia. You've done a much better job of matching the density of these. You have. I'm unsure of the direction of the light in the scene. So whenever shadows are really long, that means the light is low in the sky. And these shadows feel like they're shooting almost straight down at high noon. Let's look at this one here. You see how the shadow for this bush isn't really leaning one way or another? We can see there's a little bit over here, but there's also some over here. And where there's nothing over here, so there's the light's coming this way. I think you read it right, but it's coming at a much steeper angle. I should never be able to see these bunny's ears. The bunny's ear shadow should be falling behind it. Most of this hippo shadow should be falling under it and behind, right? There should be a pool, just like there is under this tree. There should be this pool of shadow. I'm not sure that the angle of the photo of the hippo is actually ever going to work. Seems odd, but it could be the shadow throwing me. And then you have a little too much contact shadow here, and then it gets really, you give it all away with this perfectly straight highlight line, right? So this shadow should have been broken up dark grass on the edge, like it's sitting in the grass. This is a big bunny, it's going to sit in the grass. You have a pixel or so of white line all around the bunny, which steals the illusion from us, right? Have a nice cutout outline that's kind of telling us it's cut out. So I like your shadow density. I think the direction is slightly off. It should be just more underneath. This bunny should be self-shadowing underneath right here because there is. So instead of pulling the shadow down and over that you did this way, I'm not sure how you did it, skew or whatever maybe. You should have literally just scaled it in the vertical. And so everything would have been smashed down under it. Same thing with the hippo. And I think you would have had a much more, and then you could have skewed it a little to the left. And then you would have had, like, I think a perfect shadow. The bunny should be doing some self-shadowing underneath as well as the hippo, right? So look at the underside of all these leaves. It's dark in here. You start seeing the undersides. That's because their body is shielding the underside from the light, which is mostly from above. So you should have some more self-shadowing on both the bunny and the hippo. All right, kitty cat. Ooh, the outline of the kitty cat right here steals the show. And it's right, and oh, here's what else is going on here, folks. So the kitty cat is allegedly clawing the side of the building. But the light on the kitty cat is just not right. This part of the arm should not be bright because nothing in here is bright, right? It is touching this part of the building and should be lit similarly. So this part should be in shadow. The part that's in the street around the corner should be bright. And then, yeah, and then our cutout is just a little rough here. I think that could have been refined better with the Refine Edges tool. And if nothing else, just a little more blurring, right? Maybe just a little more blurring of the whole cat. Let's talk about that. So I can see windows, but they're not even sharp lines on the windows, which are pretty big contrast with the background, right? And yet I can see like the whiskers really sharp, which are much smaller details. So I think this cat needs to be blurred altogether just a wee bit to make it feel like it's in the scene. Panera is blurry, you see that? It's not very sharp, so the kitty cat should not be very sharp, and I think that'll help make it blend. The elephant appears to be a little better in blending, but still I see much too much detail. Let's think about this. Can I see any detail in the street? Right here I can see some detail. I can see some cracks. These cracks disappear as I get back here. I know there's still cracks back here. They didn't stop, right? I can't see the detail where the snow. Oh, I like the contact shadows under everything, so I'm going to applaud you for that. Good job. I think the elephant should feel like he's in shade. I think just by literally by tinting him more cyan color because he's being lit by the sky and not the sunlight, I think he would feel more like he blended in. So adding a little going to image adjustments, color balance, and adding some cyan to him. I think would have made him feel more color blended. And perhaps I would, and then I think a little blur, right? I can't read this sign, but I can see the detail folds in his ear. I can't read that sign or that sign at all, but I can see the folds in his ear. So I think much of what's wrong with this is a little bit of color balance, a little bit of shadowing here. I think a little blur. I like your contact shadows, and your regular shadows are really good. So let me just get that out of the way. Okay, I pointed out everything that's wrong. This is a really nice composition. It has a few things that make it steal it, Kelsey, from being the sharpness of these two elements. Steal it from and the fact that they're not colored, like they're being mostly in shade, especially this part of the kitty. Part that's over around this corner should have a light bluish color. Look at anything white. The white stripes in the street are a light cyan color because they're being illuminated from the top. So the elephant and the kitty need a little cyan added to them. This whole street is cyan. I think this whole street is in shadow. I don't see sunlight anywhere here. I see sunlight in the distance up above. But I don't think anything here has real sunlight to it. Nice. All right. I think this shadow is particularly good. However, if it is falling or it's falling, like this tree, it needs to be, see how this tree trunk is shaded more on the left than it is on the right? Oops, that doesn't work in this program. Huh. Thought it was in Photoshop for a second. The trees are all just a little darker on the right-hand side, I think. And I think it's because the sun is mostly falling from above. I'm looking for details. A little back. I would think that there would be just a little more self-shadowing here if this is the shadow falling. And I like the fact that this shadow is really kind of indistinct where the edges are, because you're going to have that. I think you just need a little more blur here. And I think you would have that as well. This little area, because this is out of a catalog or something, should be self-shadowed. And these white lines that are still here are a dead giveaway. This is a cutout. I think you tried stamping the grass a little bit, which did work. Yes, you did. So that kind of that blends pretty well. This needs to be darker than this, right? Because it's underneath this. Yeah. Overall, pretty good. I'd soften the edge of this shadow, blur it a little more, so it's more like this one. Overall, relatively good job. Let's talk about the big and small part. So putting this grill looks normal size to me, right? If you put it down towards the bottom, so I know it's really close and now it's small, then it feels small. But if it's small and you put it up in the scene, it doesn't feel that small. Maybe even exaggerate them more by making them even smaller if you want to leave it there. All right, this is pretty funny. Here we go. Mike Lee, what have we here? Let's look at the shadows in the room. Okay, we need contact shadows. So whenever we have something touching something, we have contact shadows. His cutout is not the best, especially in his trousers here. You can see the white line around the trousers. Between the shadow and him, there's a white line, and that should never appear there. Where's the light coming from in the scene? Clearly, there is a window over here with light coming through. How do I know that? This wall is painted the same color. It is much brighter on this handrail here than it is on this side of the room here. So the light is falling off at the inverse square of the distance. So he is lit correctly, and so is this. I'm going to say that this is probably a little too bright to be in this scene. And the color of light in this scene, I don't know if it's getting filtered through leaves or something, but it seems to be a little warm. So I think if you were to sample with your eyedropper tool, the white here, it's actually not a white, it's probably a yellow or an orangish white. See how orangey it gets? This is kind of bluish, and it's in the same light, so the color balance on this is just slightly off. I can see both of his hands, so this would have been much more convincing. Let me take a moment. if I couldn't see this piece of this hand coming through, you know what I mean? His arm disappearing behind it looks real. But then I see this part, and I'm like, what in Jack's name happened here? There's a hand. There's an extra. That's where he's holding something else, like he's holding a rope or something. So there's that. Overall, I think this is a real clever idea. And they need contact. He needs a contact shadow, and I'm assuming this is touching here. If it's that heavy, he can't pick it up, right? So this needs a contact shadow. Let's talk about the depth of blacks. Look for the blackest black and what you're putting in the blackest black in the background. They need to match. I think this is probably a little warmer, not quite black, maybe a little brownish here, where this is black, and I think it's part of also what's telling it's not in the right light. This light's a little yellowish, and it works on his face. Doesn't work so much here. Works on his shirt too, I'll say. Finally, they're both way too sharp. That's what's throwing me. Okay. I can't make out any detail. In fact, what is in focus seems to be the back of this chair behind him somewhere. That's the most in focus thing in this shot. This is a very low resolution shot. I can see JPEG artifacting everywhere. So it's a huge mismatch. And I don't recommend blurring him till he's the point of the background sharpness, because then he would also look really crappy. So I think at the end of the day, you need to find a little sharper picture to put this into. You could try backing off his sharpness a little bit, and it will blend better, especially after you trim off the excess white areas. However, it'll never look quite right because this background picture is just really just low resolution. Okay, Molly. Oh my, I remember this one. This is hilarious. This lady's shadow does not work. This does work. Why? I'm not sure why the cookies and cream and the lady are casting a shadow backwards. I think you were trying to make the contact shadow, which should be underneath the cookies and cream, and then erased from anywhere else it might show. And it would be underneath the wheels of this cart. There should be a dark little shadow, just like we have a dark little shadow here. A dark little shadow where everything touches everything, right? Even the tomato containers on the shelf have a dark little shadow called a contact shadow. Not seeing that on anything. The reflections are better, probably a little too crisp, right? I don't see anything that crisply reflected. So maybe a blurring of those shadows would make them more realistic. So I think you're getting closer, Molly. Not quite a home run, but I'd say a stand-up double. All right. Hannah. This looks much better. Much better. The self-shadowing inside here is much better. And the shadowing off to the side, there's still a little bit of a rim of lightness off to the edge. And you might consider burning just the highlights there. I think that would turn those gray. And I would zoom in a lot and be very careful not to get the fur next to it, but just to get the highlights there. Just because it's kind of giving it away, right? That there's a shiny spot where there shouldn't be. You get away with it on the arm because it's contained within the animal. When it's on the edge, it becomes apparent that these two were different and now they're being put together. All right, let's talk about the shadows and the direction of light. Light's coming from left to right, and maybe from the front some will give you that. The shadow, though, if you look at all the shadows here from everything, there's not one sharp shadow, and then the shadows you put in are totally sharp. So really, you have a contact shadow here that would be successful. It's too big, first of all, right? It's too big. A contact shadow, literally, look around you in the world. It does not extend beyond where the contact is made. It actually lips under a little bit. So you need to erase much of this and then lift up much of this contact shadow and remove this white line, which gives away a fact that this is a cutout, right? And all this extra shadow coming from where? What? That shouldn't be there. The shadow somehow got bigger than the animal, and the contact shadow should never be bigger than the animal. Okay, finally. This should be really, really blurred and soft. So I see that it's darker there, but I should not be able to see a hard edge. We only see a hard edge when we are in direct sunlight, and nothing in this image reads that it is in direct sunlight. I don't see a single bright spot. There's a little bit of light peeking through here, more light, but it's still filtered through the trees. There's probably the edge of two trees here meeting, and this is where these brighter areas are coming from. I don't feel that this dog is in that bright of an area like it is up the road. I think around the head is amazing. I think you did a really nice job up here. A little bit of a white line. Now that I start to look at it, a little bit of a white line here and here. Yeah, not bad. The cow is actually pretty nice. They both feel like they're in the same quality of light, so I think you got their colors right. I'm feeling the cow is a bit too sharp. I can make out the cow's eyes and the Holstein pattern, the white pattern here with a couple of spots in it. But these leaves, which are closer than the cow, are already blending just to become colored blobs. So I think he's a little too in focus. And I'm going to say the same thing for the dog. Let's look at the leaves right on the ground in front of the dog, even next to the dog. Can we make out where one leaf starts and one ends? No. But I can see the hairs and the whiskers very clearly in the dog. And I think that's the other thing that's keeping this from being a really, really excellent thing. A couple of tweaks. All right, we have the elephant. Feels real. There's a little bright spot right on its hindquarters that I think you could work on a little more to keep it, but the shadow feels it's in the right direction. The density is right. You got the density or the thickness and the color of the shadows just right. This one feels a little weird by the way it's going, but we are on uneven terrain. So in reality it should, but, and here's what it is. I see what's bothering me. The shadow needs to start at this edge and continue on, not just where it wants to start. The furthest edge, this is a round object, is facing me, so this is where the shadow should start. And the line feels a little too sharp, so maybe you'll notice this line is sharp, but not overly sharp. So I think that's a little bit of blur on that line. Oh, and finally, Grace. I see an issue, and I didn't notice this before. I think you might have changed bottles. I'm not going to go look, but something's a little odd here. Or did you blur the bottle? Because I think you blurred it too much. Now let's look at the detail in the basket. I can see detail in the basket. The basket is further away from me. I can see detail in the sand. Lots of detail in the sand. The word Hydro Flask is totally soft. Everything about this is totally blurred. I think you meant to blur the shadow and you blurred the flask. That's my best guess. Max. Oh my, this is almost right on the money, bud. We need contact shadows. You see the contact shadow on this thing that is setting on? I'm not going to say it about this because the grass has been put in, this AstroTurf, around these things which are cemented into the ground. But I'm going to look at something that's setting on the ground, which is this piece of fiberglass rock. And you'll see that contact shadow. We need that contact shadow here. Finally, Max, yours is going to be pretty quick. Your direction is not bad, actually, but this part of the tail should also be connected in shadow. It should be colored in a little bit right there as well, right? So it feels like it's slightly off. This looks pretty good, though. But they're a little too dark, maybe. Maybe the right darkness. Shadows are darker the closer they are to something than they get away. You could try putting a gradient in there or erasing. Maybe with your eraser, big soft fluffy eraser, it's set to 2 or 3%. Just to soften it a little bit. But more important than that, this shadow has a slightly blurry edge because this is on a carpet that's about 1 inch or 2 thick of fake grass. And so this shadow is too sharp, and so is this one. You see how soft these edges are? These edges need to be just as soft. I would blur the whole shadow. some Gaussian blur. Nice job, though. You really fixed that. Really good. So we were feeling that the tree shadow was coming down this way, and that the crab shadow needed, yeah. So the light's coming just slightly down this way, and that's what you've got going. Okay, sorry I got silent there. I was looking and thinking and thinking and looking, Clark. Yes, the shadow of the elephant looks much better. Although it should be erased here. I'm not sure what would be causing a shadow past his foot, right? Oh, and this one too, the whole shadow needs to be erased or moved over. You see how the shadow of his feet are here? It needs to touch. There's many ways to do that. I probably would just have erased it, and I probably never would have noticed. All right, so it needs to be a little softer on the edge. See how irregular and soft this is? It's just a little blurred. I would blur the edges of that shadow a little bit. And finally, I think I would darken underneath the elephant some more. So this is some harsh, direct sunlight. Doesn't get more direct than on the beach with nothing blocking it. And so the crab fits in with that motif, although a bit too sharp. I can see the little details in the crab's face, but I can't see the details in the trunk. So I would blur this just a skosh. And I would blur the elephant a little bit too, because I can't pick out the edges of these rocks in the sand, but I can pick out all of this. And then there's a little defect in your cutout of the elephant as well right there, and that really makes it stand out when it's that sharp. But the elephant should be a little darker. Look at your darkest dark underneath. Your darkest dark underneath. I think I'm going to take that back. I think you need to change the contrast and have a little less contrast on the crab, okay? So I don't think you have a solid black, 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 dark, dark. I think even the darkest one here is a dark gray. And then you have a solid black, black here. And I think that changing your contrast on your crab a little bit will make the elephant blend in more with the scene as well as the crab. But the elephant actually blends with the scene. It just doesn't blend with the crab. Finally, one last bit of stuff here, Clark. All of these lines that we are seeing here are things that you erased, selections that you made, and you deleted them, but you didn't go back in with an eraser and clean up their edges. So all of this stuff is sloppy editing. Really close. I think once you change the contrast on this guy and clean up the edges on your shadows, you have a home run for a portfolio piece. Okay, Cass. The fly actually works fairly well. Maybe a little too detailed. I can't quite make out the detail in the little, whatever you call that, the part where it grows out of from the flower. But I can't make out that detail, but I can make out the little veins here perfectly. Right? I can barely see the detail in the skin texture, but I make this out perfectly. So I think blurring this a little bit, just the entire thing, a little Gaussian blur would be good for you. The shadow's got a nice amount of blur to it. So that seems to be working. I'm not sure about the climber lady. She's very, very blue in a sea of yellow. And that makes it feel just a bit off. Just like the little bit of blue over here. So these highlights don't have any blue in them, these specular highlights, but these do. They have cyan in them. So I think the color balance is a shade off. I would push it a little more over to yellow. And I think you'd be right on the money. And the same thing with her. Also, she's also too sharp, right? I can see clearly the folds in her outfit. And I shouldn't be able to, I can't see the folds in Mother Nature's little piece of whatever that thing is called. Just a little too blue. The shadows aren't really blue in here. They're kind of reddish yellowish. And she should match that same tone of the shadow she's in. Finally, I think her shadow should be erased from inside of here. I'm not sure she'd be making a double shadow. She might be. maybe just a little more blurry. That's what it is. See how soft the shadow that's being cast by the lemon is, but her shadow's much harder. So more blur on the shadows as well. You have more blur on this shadow than you do on this one. I blur them both just a little bit. Nice. Alexis. Oh my God, that whale looks amazing. And now the whale, to be made small, should be brought closer to the bottom of the picture. The closer it is to the bottom, the closer it is to the camera. So he doesn't feel extremely small, I guess, unless you compare him to the rubber ducky, which looks pretty good too. The rubber ducky is not quite as good a sell. You did the transparent erasing. You should have come back with maybe a little hard edge just to clean up where, so it became more, you know what I mean? Like there's a little bit of ghosting here that I shouldn't be seeing. It just feels a little weird, like you've gone and erased too much up here. If the water was lapping up to it, it wouldn't be so diffuse. It would have a harder edge a little bit. You're very close. I think you've blown the ducky up beyond its size. It's getting a little jagged over here, especially in comparison to the sharpness of the water and the whale. But I'm being nitpicky on these redos. Really nice overall. The color of the lighting's pretty good. The whale I buy more than the ducky. The ducky should have some more self-shadow. At least a little bit of self-shadow. It doesn't seem to have much self-shadow at all, and it should have some. Just a little bit. Oh my gosh. So this is hilarious. I think you've just about nailed it. See how well these two shadows blend together? I'm not sure what this is right here, Michaela. I'm not sure. I think it's something that needs to be erased right there. But you've got these to blend perfectly, so it really feels like the meerkat's causing the shadow. And the horse feels lit. Contact shadows on both really sell this. Home run. Grand slam. Home run. Michaela Schmidt. Crowd's going wild. Take a victory lap. It's very nice. Oh, much better. Much better. Much better. Hard to believe that they're both. So this one is really convincing. Except for the shadow. Both shadows. Oh. And the edge here of the fish. So I'm not sure that you really need much of a shadow. I would blur the heck out of these and maybe erase some of the detail. It should just be getting a little dark back there. But I shouldn't see the beginning and end of something, right? It should just be kind of arbitrary where it's at. I don't think that you change the blending mode either, where it says normal on the layers palette. I think changing this to multiply maybe, if you wanted to darken it, or overlay might be the one to go with. I think that would make it look more realistic. Finally, the real, I think, disconnect here. This edge is a little harsh, and I think it's a byproduct of your cutout. But let's talk about the fish itself. This fish has no detail up here. It's so overlit. I'm not sure if the original image was overlit like this, but the stuff is blown out on it, but none of the stuff is blown out on the water. All right, and that's what keeps it. So this feels real until I get to here, and then I feel cartoonish. So you are so close. So close. So close to having a great example for your portfolio. Here's your redo. I think I already commented on this redo once in the previous video, but I'll comment on it again. Definitely much better. With the chairs still aren't right. I think that's my big thing. This feels more right. This cutout seems really bad over here for this. But yeah, this chairs and stuff still isn't right. I'm looking for more redos. All right. Yeah, your bottle is. You blurred the wrong thing, Grace. I'm positive of it now. All right, there were no more redos hidden. So that's our video for your redos. Now you know.